Now, I'm delighted to say that joining me is Chris Hanretty, who's a politics expert at the University of East Anglia. Chris, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
I presume it was a long night for you, like it was a long night for many other people. Just how stunned were you by the result?
Yeah, pretty surprised. I mean, I think going into last night, you had people saying, well, you know, Clinton's maybe an 80% chance, a 90% chance. So I don't think there was anyone saying it was going to be a toss-up. I don't think there was anyone saying, yeah, Trump's going to have a clear lead in the Electoral College. So I'm really pretty surprised. I think most people are. I think most people have a right to be surprised. And it's probably the most surprising election result in the past 60 years since Dewey versus Truman.
And looking at the result now with hindsight, how do you think we arrived at this? How did it happen? What won it?
So it's a bit strange because although we now know that Trump's won the Electoral College, it's not clear that he's won the popular vote. So we're going to have this situation where Clinton got more votes but ends up losing. So any explanation we have to come up with has to account for that. And the nearest I can get to an explanation is that there were lots of rural white voters that Trump needed in states in the Midwest, and they all turned out to vote. And he got them exactly where he needed them. And all the votes that Democrats rack up in California or New York aren't going to change that outcome. So I think there's a story about turnout here, and there's also a story about white non-college graduates.
And the question most people will be asking sat at home is, what happens next? What happens next for the world? A nice small and easy question for you.
I guess the big question is whether Trump the president is going to be at all similar to Trump the candidate. And you would hope that the presidency is going to moderate him. I mean, the presidency is a crushing burden for anyone, you know, having to deal with all these big problems. I'm not sure how he's going to react. And I think there are lots of policy areas where we just don't know, and there haven't been a lot of specifics released. So the answer to the question is, I'm not really sure, and I'm not sure anyone can be sure.
And what about for the UK? Because that's even more remote. I mean, how much of an impact could we see here from something that's happening miles away?
So I guess I mean, there might be impact on Britons working in the US. Trump said that he's going to look at different visa categories. So there might be issues for Britons working over there. The other big thing is post-Brexit, you know, what are the chances of a US-UK trade deal? Now, Trump was relatively happy to say that the UK would be a priority for him. And now that the Republicans have the presidency, the House, the Senate, you would think that a US-UK trade deal could be good. So there might be some glimmer of hope for the UK.
And you mentioned Brexit there. A lot of people were comparing it this morning, the surprise they felt, to the surprise they felt when we voted to leave the European Union. Do you think the messages that we get from voters in these situations is telling us something about how politics is changing in the whole of the Western world?
I think it is, to some extent. I mean, 50 years ago, there was a German sociologist who was studying UK politics, and he said, class is the basis of British politics. Everything else is detail. I don't think you'd say that now. I think it's education. It's about, you know, what your worldviews are. Not, you know, how much money do you get from the government, but how do you identify, how do you see yourself, how do you see your links to the outside world. So there's a big change going on, and I think it's possible to group Brexit and Trump under that really broad heading.
And just sum up for us just how significant a moment this is. You obviously study politics a lot. You teach, you influence young people in this sphere. How significant will this moment come to be in years' time?
I think it's going to be probably one of the most significant elections in the US over the past 100 years. And I think it probably says a lot about US society in ways that maybe some people had picked up on. But there's one thing about an election victory, it clarifies things. And there are two sides to this election, and Trump's side won. And now we have to work out what that means.
I just want to ask you briefly about the campaigning and the campaigns that were run. We spoke a lot about the campaigns in Brexit and the in and the out campaigns and the rights and wrongs of those campaigns. In America, it's like a show. It's like it's like a pantomime sometimes even. So what do you think about the campaigning over there?
I mean, this is the strange thing. US campaigning is hugely professionalised, and most of the professionals were on Clinton's side. So she had the more sophisticated teams. She looked to have the better get out the vote operations. So in terms of the campaigns, I'm asking myself, does any of it really matter? Is it worth spending money conducting polling, getting the best people to do your get out the vote operations? Maybe all that fuss doesn't really matter.
And in terms of reaction, I'll ask about your personal reaction in a moment, but the reaction you felt from young people in politics, the reaction you've already seen, I gather, from your peers over the last few hours even, what have you gauged from that reaction?
Well, I mean, I had the choice of following the election in front of my computer at my home in the warm, or following it from the student union. I think if I'd followed it from the student union, there would have been a lot of people drowning their sorrows, and certainly they were tweeting to that effect. So I'm going in now to teach, so I'll be asking my students what they think about it. I don't expect them to be particularly happy.
And just finally, I wanted to ask you, you're a man who knows his politics, you know your polls, you like to have a little flutter occasionally on the markets and these things. How did you get on last night?
I did okay. Some of the early results in Florida seemed to suggest that the story wasn't as easy as that. But I was able to follow some people who were doing some on-the-night modelling, and they had the knack of saying, okay, we had some data coming into this, we start getting the results in now, we need to start taking Trump victories in Florida, in Michigan and Wisconsin more seriously. So I did all right, and we'll see how the rest of the world does.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.